I'm in a weird position when it comes to being a Sonic fan. I'm a child of the Dreamcast era, but I never actually owned a Dreamcast. I didn't even know what a Dreamcast was. I didn't even know Sega made consoles. You see, I was introduced to Sonic in about 2003, 2 years after the Dreamcast was discontinued. So while I'm a child of the Dreamcast era, my origins with Sonic lie on the Nintendo GameCube. Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2 are my favorite games of all time. I've probably beaten both games at least 15 to 20 times. I don't know, I've never counted. The point I'm trying to make is that I know these games like the back of my hand. So obviously the argument that I'm about to make may not hold as much weight just because I've spent so much of my life with these games, but it's still some thoughts I'd like to share on the matter. Aside from the too many friends mantra, one of the most common criticisms I hear about Sonic, particularly in the early 2000s, is that Sonic games were straying too far from what made them Sonic games. People didn't want to shoot things or fish. They just wanted a classic Sonic experience, and I can't blame them for that. Sonic Adventure 1 did a lot for being Sonic's first foray into 3D. Honestly, I think it's admirable and not commended nearly enough for just how much gameplay variety they were able to fit into that game. Sonic Adventure 2 had three distinct gameplay styles. You had the high-speed action stages for Sonic and Shadow. These played like your typical Sonic levels, fast gameplay with platforming. Next, you had the lock-on mech shooter levels with Tails and Dr. Eggman. And lastly, you have everyone's favorite, the treasure hunting levels with Knuckles and Rouge. Oh wait, never mind, I think people hated these. The treasure hunting gameplay style originated in Sonic Adventure. These were the stages that were exclusive to Knuckles. Story-wise, the Master Emerald, the mystical jewel that Knuckles is sworn to protect on Angel Island, was shattered by chaos, and it's up to the Red Echidna to find all the pieces and restore it. Gameplay-wise, the player is dropped into a sandbox and required to locate 3 emerald pieces using the emerald radar provided to them, and hence provided by the glowing balls of light, also known as Tikal. The aforementioned Emerald Radar is the main tool at the player's disposal when it comes to locating the Master Emerald pieces. However, you have blue, green, yellow, pink, and red, with each color of the radar indicating how close you are to the emerald. Emerald pieces can be anywhere, in plain sight, inside of enemies, even underground. It was admittedly a rough start, but I think the gameplay was a novel idea. It was a nice change of pace and a good way to translate Knuckles' unique gameplay abilities over to 3D. Knuckles only had 5 stages this time: Speed Highway, Casinopolis, Red Mountain, Lost World, and Skydeck. Now with the sequel, Sonic Adventure 2, some much needed refinements and tweaks were made. First of all, Knuckles controls far better, runs faster, climbs faster, glides faster, and he can swim. The radar colors were simplified to just 3 colors this time: green, yellow, and red, which makes locating emerald pieces a little less tedious. In addition to this, an exclamation point will appear on top of Knuckles' head whenever you're right on top of the emerald piece, usually when it's hidden underground, although sometimes you have to spam the digging to find the exact spot of the emerald. The hint orbs are gone and replaced with little TVs that grant you hints as to where the next emerald piece is. Story-wise, it's essentially the same principle here. The emerald shatters and Knuckles must find the pieces, but this time he's not the only one after the emerald pieces. Enter Rouge the Bat. Rouge plays almost identically to Knuckles, albeit using her trademark kicks rather than Knuckles' punches. This time around, instead of just treading the same levels that every other playable character does, the treasure hunting levels are specifically made for Knuckles and Rouge, and I think that's a major improvement. Building stages from the ground up with the treasure hunting mechanics in mind just works far better in my opinion. Knuckles gets Wild Canyon, Pumpkin Hill, Aquatic Mine, Death Chamber, and Meteor Herd. Rouge gets Dry Lagoon, Egg Quarters, Security Hall, and Mad Space. Rouge's stages are notoriously gimmicky for no good reason, other than to spice up the gameplay, I suppose, although it often leads to more frustration than fun in a lot of instances. Dry Lagoon has a turtle that you use to move to 2 separate parts of the level via a well, which can sometimes be frustrating if you don't know where to look for the emerald piece. Egg Quarters has an awful beetle drone mech thing that patrols the base and will zap you if you don't take cover in the shadows. Side note, this thing used to absolutely terrify me as a kid. Security Hall sees Rouge hunting for emerald pieces under the pressure of a 5-minute time limit, which by the way, Eggman actually gave her the option of having 15, but Little Miss Confident decided that 5 should be plenty. And Mad Space, we hate Mad Space. Mad Space is terrible. Backward hints is absolutely insane. From a lore perspective, I will say it makes sense as to why Rouge would be sneaking around a base and treasure hunting with a timer. She's a government agent and a spy, it's her thing. Also, looking back, I get the impression that the dark side of the story mode was supposed to be the hero side, but a hard mode, essentially. I have an appreciation for Rouge's level quirks that I didn't have as a kid, but it doesn't make it any less frustrating sometimes. Overall, though, I think Sonic Adventure 2 improved the treasure hunting formula substantially over its predecessor. The only room for improvement that stands out to me is the fact that your radar will only lead you to one emerald piece at a time. You can theoretically find the pieces in any order you want to, but the radar is only going to track one at a time for you, which just seems odd looking back, especially considering the radar in Adventure 1 did track all of the pieces at the same time. Although the treasure hunting mechanic in its true dedicated form was left behind with the Sonic Adventure series, it was carried on in spirit in Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Knuckles and Rouge both stepped back into their treasure hunting roles after a brief period of team building exercises and trying to convince Shadow not to destroy the world with his estranged father. The Echidna and the Bat served as side characters, referred to as amigo characters, in Sonic and Shadow's story respectively. Most, if not all, of their objectives involved them traversing enclosed areas of their respective levels and searching for any number of items. Knuckles assists Sonic in Flame Core after Team Sonic, Shadow, and Rouge are both sent to the future, the former by Dr. Eggman and the latter two by Mephiles. After Team Sonic failed to find a Chaos Emerald in Crisis City, they detected one in Flame Core. Sonic makes the daring journey into the volcano, after which Knuckles must search the interior chamber and activate 5 floating pink orbs to open the door. Later, at the climax of Sonic's story, Knuckles accompanies Sonic and Tails as they blast through Aquatic Base to prevent the launch of Eggman's egg carrier. Knuckles traverses the bottomless pit sections of the level to locate switches that will allow Sonic to proceed. Rouge plays a far bigger role in Shadow's story when compared to that of Knuckles and Sonic's story. At the beginning of Shadow's tale, he is sent to Eggman's base in White Acropolis by Gun in order to rescue an agent with which they've lost contact. The agent in question is none other than Rouge the Bat, who seems to have a knack for getting in hot water and requiring Shadow to come to her aid. However, while Shadow is making a ruckus infiltrating the snow-covered base, Rouge simultaneously is making her own escape. Her section in White Acropolis is unique in that it is purely progression-based, with no treasure hunting involved. However, things return to form in the very next level, Kingdom Valley. Escorted by Shadow, Rouge takes the Scepter of Darkness that she stole from Eggman to the Gun extraction point. Her section of Kingdom Valley has her searching for 3 keys in order for the 2 of them to progress, heavily calling back to the Sonic Adventure 2 days. Rouge later appears in Flame Core, serving an identical role to Knuckles in Sonic's version of the level, locating the glowing orbs within the volcano in order to allow Shadow to proceed. Immediately following Flame Core and their clash with Iblis, Sonic and Shadow successfully open a portal back to their own time, and everyone returns, save for Shadow, who made the last-minute decision to pursue Mephiles. Rouge quickly realizes that Shadow is stuck in the future and heads to Tropical Jungle to find E123 Omega. Tropical Jungle represents Rouge's search for Omega in order to set her plan to save Shadow into motion. At first glance, you would expect this stage to be a treasure hunting one, but it isn't. Rather, it's a simple get to the goal ring stage, which is odd considering you can just glide straight to the goal without much trouble. Disregarding the endless sea of commentary regarding Sonic 06, I appreciated the attempt to bring gameplay variety to the game in a more subtle way. The inclusion of Knuckles, Rouge, and the other Amigo characters made 06 feel like an attempt to pay homage to the adventure games without creating another adventure game outright. However, I lean more on the theory that Sonic 06, for better or worse, was meant to be Sonic Adventure 3. Sure, Knuckles and Rouge play awfully and their controls are broken, and Knuckles could have been removed from the story altogether and nothing would have changed, but being the adventure fanboy that I am, I was just glad to see them here. Knuckles would make his grand playable return in a main series game in Sonic Frontiers: The Final Horizon. It has its own callbacks to its adventure era days, with his ability to explore, glide, and climb in a 3D open space. Frontiers was arguably the best game for Knuckles to appear in, as the entire crux of the game sees Sonic in a large open sandbox in which he can explore and collect items. All of Knuckles' trademark abilities are here, minus digging, but there are some unexpected new additions like the homing attack and his own versions of the boost and side loop abilities. Also, I thought it was cool that he was able to grind again, since a lot of the characters haven't been able to grind since Sonic Heroes, if I remember correctly. Alongside Tails and Amy, Knuckles must traverse Uranos Island to find the Chaos Emeralds. So what's everyone's issue with the treasure hunting stages? To put it simply, people don't want to take the time to get good at them. It's a lack of patience, in my opinion. I can speak from experience as a young kid. I didn't care for these stages either. I just wanted to go fast with Sonic and Shadow. There was a clear defined goal, and honestly the speed stages were just easier and more fun to me as a kid, and they still are my most revisited levels of the game. I didn't care for the challenge and the slower gameplay loop of finding the emerald pieces. Looking back now, I believe the emerald hunting stages were meant to be challenging. Just like Sonic levels historically were meant to be replayed to get better times and find the best route to the end, the same can be said for the emerald hunting stages as well. Once you learn the layout of the levels, hunting for the emeralds eventually becomes a breeze. I feel like there's more room to appreciate this lost gameplay mechanic because it called back to a time when Sonic games at least tried to do something different. After a decade of Sonic games essentially being the same game with one gimmick thrown in, I just yearned for something outside of the boost formula. Yes, I play Sonic games for Sonic, but I miss seeing quirks of other characters in action, and this goes all the way back to the Genesis era. Sonic 3 and Knuckles had 3 distinct gameplay styles of its own, with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. The treasure hunting stages are an example of Sonic Team trying a new mechanic, looking back at its flaws and refining it, something they never really did again. With the exception of the Wisps, modern day Sonic Team would dip their toes into something new, but if it wasn't unanimously praised, then it was trashed. The only reason they brought classic Sonic back in Sonic Forces was because of nostalgia bait and to appease the section of the fan base who had already gotten their fix with Sonic Mania. And the Wisps, well, I'm not sure why they got a second chance. Third if you count the Wispons from Sonic Forces. I don't hate the Wisps, but hopefully you get my point. I appreciate Sonic Frontiers and Shadow Generations so much because the former changed up the Sonic formula in literally the most drastic way since Sonic Adventure all the way back in 1998. And for the former, simply because it gave the characters character again, especially characters that have been so one note like Shadow for so long. And that's essentially all I've ever wanted from the series as of late.